Welcome back to Sister Wives Daily, the channel where we reveal the secrets, expose the cover-ups, and break down the stories TLC doesn't want you to hear. For years, Coyote Pass was marketed as the Brown family's ultimate fantasy, the property where Kody, Christine, Janelle, Meri, and Robyn would once and for all come together. 4 houses, 1 parcel, and a destiny tied together forever. It was the stuff dreams were made of. Except it turned out to be something else entirely, the ticking time bomb of a family empire already fissuring at its core. That bomb has just detonated. In a stunning verdict from an Arizona courtroom, the judge commanded that Coyote Pass be auctioned off, not divided among the wives, not set aside for the children. It was gone, sold to the highest bidder to pay off rising debts and undisclosed obligations the Browns never wanted made public. Stay with me, because what is to be unfolded isn't just about land, it is about lies, betrayal, and the final destruction of a so-called legacy of the family. Within the courtroom, the two sides were as splintered as the family itself. Christine, Janelle, and Meri sat together shoulder to shoulder, their faces strained but cohesive. Across from them, Kody and Robyn leaned forward toward each other, attorneys whispering in hushed urgency, Robyn's tears falling harder with every reference to the land. The prosecution didn't hesitate to establish the tone. Their opening statement was biting and crushing. Coyote Pass was never about constructing houses. It was about concealing debt. The record will reveal that Mr. Brown abused family funds, deceived his wives, and used their sacrifices to keep his empire going. Christine's eyes shone, yet she kept her chin up. Janelle gritted her teeth. Meri remained white, her hands clutched tightly in her lap. Across from them, Kody shook his head hard, muttering to himself, his face flushed with rage. Robyn whispered, "This isn't fair. This isn't fair." Then the bombshell first piece of evidence, lien records associated with Coyote Pass. They revealed stacked mortgages, secret loans, and debts that made the property less valuable than the fantasy it once promised. The words of the lawyer pierced the silence. This land was not their future. It was their prison. The judge leaned back, his brow creased. The jury scribbled vehemently, and thus the trial was off and running. Then the prosecution brings out the books that establish Coyote Pass was drowning in debt from the very start, and how Christine's and Janelle's sacrifices were drained into Robyn's estate. The courtroom projector hummed to life, and with it came the papers that would shred the dream of Coyote Pass to shreds. The prosecution's first expert witness was summoned, a financial analyst with a thick binder of records she had received from Discovery. The lawyer addressed the jury with measured precision. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to witness confirms that Coyote Pass was never a sound investment. It was an investment trap, buried beneath secret loans and irresponsible obligations." On the screen was shown the original 2018 buy agreement. To fans, this was the dawn of a rosy future. But here in court, it was revealed to be the beginning of catastrophe. The fine print uncovered balloon payments, unpayable interest rates, and liens on the land even before the Browns ever broke ground. The attorney's voice sharpened. By the time Mr. Brown signed this document, he had already buried his family in $600,000 of debt. Christine's face contorted. She looked down at her hands, tears falling silently. Janelle sat tense, her jaw clenched, her fists pressed against her thighs. Meri blinked hard, her lips tightening, as if with each word she had suspected all along. Across from her, Robyn held Kody's hand, whispering in tears, "They're distorting it." Kody shook his head wildly, muttering, "Not true, not true. This wasn't a terrible mortgage. This was a time bomb, and Kody knew it the whole time." The prosecutor turned to the next exhibit, Christine's sale of her Las Vegas home, a check for close to $300,000, endorsed and deposited into the Brown Family LLC, Christine's head jerked up, her eyes glassy, as the lawyer described. She thought this money was going to construction on Coyote Pass. Instead, within 60 days, the money was funneled, not into land development, but into the down payment on Robyn Brown's mansion. The jury gasped. Christine put her hands over her face and wept into them. Then came Janelle's sacrifice. The records indicated her retirement funds, years of diligent savings, pumped into the same LLC, more than $250,000 lost. The attorney's voice was a low drawl. This money never made it to Coyote Pass. Instead, it was used to pay secret loan installments and purchase Robyn's mansion. Janelle's voice cracked as she whispered into the mic. But it wasn't her time on the stand. That was my kid's future. That was everything I saved. The gallery murmured, the judge thumping his gavel for silence. The jury's gaze swung between the wives, their sympathies achingly real. The so-called family land wasn't merely neglected. It was eaten into to support the luxury of one home while leaving the others in arrears. The lawyer slammed the binder closed with a bang. Coyote Pass was never being built. It was a shell game, a diversion. And the women that you see standing before you were its victims. The words floated in the air, and at that instant, the vision of Coyote Pass dissolved into proof of deception. Then the prosecution calls their forensic accountant, and his testimony will show just how Kody steered money into Robyn's mansion while instructing the other wives to be patient. The atmosphere in the courtroom became more dense as the next witness stepped up, a forensic accountant retained to sort out the Brown family's web of loans, deeds, and transfers. He had a pile of folders and a laser pointer with him, prepared to decipher years of secrets behind LLCs and half-truths. The prosecutor advanced. Sir, in simple terms, can you tell us what you discovered when you followed up on the Brown family's finances? The accountant pushed his glasses back up his nose, speaking evenly. Yes, briefly, Coyote Pass was never financed for development. Rather, it was used as collateral, and family donations intended for construction were diverted to pay off debts and pay for a luxury residence for Robyn Brown. The jury leaned in, the charts flashed on the projector, revealing arrows, timelines, and money trails. First slide, Christine's $300,000 sale of her home. The accountant gestured. This deposit made into the Brown Family LLC in June 2019. But in weeks, $280,000 of it was funneled into a down payment for Robyn's Flagstaff mansion that left hardly any for land development. Christine brushed away tears from her face, her voice cracking. I knew it. I always knew. Second slide, Janelle's retirement fund. Mrs. Brown contributed around $250,000. These monies were applied towards past due mortgage payments and reducing personal credit lines that were only in Mr. Brown's name. And again, none went to Coyote Pass. The jury gasped in shock. Janelle sat rigidly, glaring directly at Kody, her eyes smoldering with silent rage. This wasn't bad planning. This was redirection. A planned diversion of money from family resources into Robyn's family, while the others were kept at bay on promises. Next was the third slide. A chart tracking loan stacking. The accountant clarified. Mr. Brown used Coyote Pass over and over as collateral to borrow more and more loans, some up to $150,000. Those loans weren't disclosed to the other wives. They were used for personal spending, including car purchases and private school fees. Gasp filled the courtroom. The jurors looked at each other, writing furiously. Christine shook her head in disgust. Janelle grumbled under her breath. All lies, all of it. Meri remained stiff, faced but her hands tangled restlessly in her lap. The accountant's tone sank lower, as if to hammer the point home. In my opinion, this is a textbook case of misrepresentation and financial fraud in a family partnership framework. The money was directed with intent and the accounts were covered up in order to avoid detection. The prosecutor turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, you've seen the documents. You've heard the expert. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't oversight. This was theft disguised as family unity. The courtroom was no longer looking at Kody Brown as a husband or a father. They were looking at him as a man accused of fraud. Robyn grasped Kody's arm, tears running down her face. "They're making you a villain," she whispered. But Kody's face had changed, his jaw clenched, his face white. For the first time, the swagger seemed to go out of his eyes. And with that, the financial fantasy of Coyote Pass dissolved under the hard light of numbers. Then the prosecutor reveals Exhibit D, the deed transfers, evidence that Kody secretly transferred ownership, shares to cover himself and Robyn years ago, before the other wives even knew. If the financial records had cracked the illusion of Coyote Pass, the next exhibit obliterated it. The prosecutor wheeled in a display board covered in enlarged deed transfers, each stamped and signed, each one a puzzle piece in the scheme. He faced the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Exhibit D. These are the property deeds for Coyote Pass. What you will see is a deliberate, calculated effort to move ownership away from the original partners and consolidate it into one household." The first document appeared on the monitor. Meri's deed transfer. In 2020, her share of Coyote Pass was quietly reassigned. No announcement, no family meeting, just a line on a page. The attorney's voice cut sharp. Mrs. Brown believed she still held her share, but the records show otherwise. Without her knowledge, her name was erased from the chain of ownership. Meri's face went pale. Her lips trembled, her hands twisting in her lap. She whispered under her breath, "I knew something was wrong. I knew it." The second document, Janelle's share, transferred into a trust controlled jointly by Kody and Robyn. The third, Christine's share, shifted in 2021, months before her official split from Kody. The attorney underlined the point. By the time Christine walked away, her legal control of Coyote Pass was already gone. Mr. Brown had taken it, quietly, legally, but without disclosure. This wasn't just fraud. This was a hostile takeover inside a marriage, signatures and stamps replacing vows and trust. The jury gasped audibly. One juror shook their head, scribbling furiously. The gallery buzzed until the judge slammed his gavel for order. The prosecution turned back to the jury. "What you are seeing here is the systematic dismantling of a family partnership." The land was not a shared dream. It was a chessboard, and every move was designed to corner my clients until they had nothing left. Christine buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. Janelle sat stiffly, her lips pressed into a hard line, fury flashing in her eyes. Meri stared ahead, hollow, as if watching every suspicion of betrayal being confirmed in black and white ink. And on the defense side, Robyn broke down, clinging to Kody's arm. "They're twisting it," she repeated, her voice cracking, but Kody's expression said it all. His face flushed red, his jaw set tight, his eyes darting to the jury, a man cornered by his own paper trail. The courtroom didn't just see mismanagement anymore. They saw theft, concealment, and manipulation written into the very deeds of the land itself. The prosecutor closed his file. Coyote Pass wasn't just put up for auction because of debt. It was put up for auction because its very ownership was poisoned, and the evidence proves Mr. Brown engineered every step of that poison. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every juror sat locked in thought. The wives sat in devastation, and Kody Brown sat exposed. Next, the prosecution calls a surprise witness, a former TLC producer who reveals what really happened behind the cameras when the family was told the dream of Coyote Pass is still alive. The prosecution shuffled their papers. then turned toward the double doors at the back of the courtroom. Your Honor, the plaintiffs call their next witness, a former producer of Sister Wives. The gallery erupted in whispers. Reporters leaned forward. Even the jury looked startled. A TLC insider. This was no longer just a family feud. This was about to blow open the very show that made the Browns famous. The witness, identified only as Sarah Jensen to protect her professional reputation, took the stand. She looked nervous but determined, her hand trembling slightly as she swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor wasted no time. Miss Jensen, during your time as a producer on Sister Wives, were you aware of discussions about Coyote Pass and the family's finances? She nodded firmly. Yes, we filmed scenes where Kody repeatedly told the wives and the viewers that the land was their future, that they just had to be patient, that construction would begin soon. But behind the cameras, the story was very different. The prosecutor leaned closer. How different? Jensen's voice grew sharper. I was in production meetings where Kody admitted they didn't have the money to develop the land. He told us to sell the dream anyway. He knew they were drowning in debt, but he wanted TLC to frame it as the family's unshakable goal. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Christine covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Janelle's eyes widened in disbelief. Even Meri, who had long suspected manipulation, looked stunned to hear it confirmed under oath. This wasn't just a family betrayal anymore. This was a television cover. Up the illusion of a dream carefully scripted for viewers, while the truth was hidden in court documents. The prosecutor pulled up footage on the monitor. A clip from the show where Kody proudly announced the family's big plans for Coyote Pass. Then he paused it and turned back to Jensen. What was happening off camera at this time? She hesitated, then spoke clearly. Robyn had just pushed Kody to buy her Flagstaff mansion. He told us, the crew, that the land project was on hold indefinitely. But he insisted we keep filming as though it was still alive. The jury sat in stunned silence. One juror shook their head, muttering under their breath. The defense attorney sprang up. Objection, this is irrelevant to the matter of ownership. But the judge overruled. Overruled. The witness may continue. Jensen's final words were devastating. The dream of Coyote Pass was a storyline, not a plan, and Kody knew it. In that moment, the jury didn't just see a husband accused of fraud. They saw a man who manipulated his family and millions of viewers with a lie. Christine sobbed openly now, her tears staining the pages of her notes. Janelle leaned back in her chair, her eyes wet, her voice a whisper. He sold us all a dream that never existed. And on the other side, Robyn crumbled, burying her face in her hands. Kody sat rigid, his fists clenched, his face red with anger, his eyes locked on the floor. The prosecutor's voice rang out. The plaintiffs call Christine Brown to the stand. The gallery stirred as Christine rose slowly, her face pale but determined. She adjusted her blouse, clasped her hands tightly, and walked to the witness stand. For years, Christine had been the heart of the Brown family's story. The wife who loved big, laughed loud, and carried the weight of children and sacrifice. Now she stood, not as a wife but as a plaintiff in a case that could redefine her life. After swearing in, Christine sat, her voice trembling but clear. For 25 years, I believed in this family. I believed in Kody's promises. I gave him everything, my youth, my money, my loyalty, and in return, I was left with nothing. The prosecutor nodded gently, then asked, Christine, can you describe the moment you realized Coyote Pass wasn't going to be the dream you were promised? Christine took a shaky breath. It wasn't just one moment. But if I had to choose, it was when he left for the 11-day honeymoon with Robyn. I was 9 months pregnant with Truly. I was raising 5 kids alone, and he left. That's when I knew The rules we had lived by, the balance we promised each other, were gone, and Coyote Pass, it was just another broken promise waiting to happen. The courtroom fell silent. Even the jurors sat frozen, pen still hanging on her every word. This wasn't just a testimony. This was a wound laid bare, the emotional foundation of the case that no spreadsheet could capture. The prosecutor pressed on. Christine, what did you contribute financially to Coyote Pass? Tears welled in her eyes. I sold my Las Vegas home. I gave nearly $300,000. I was told it was for building on Coyote Pass. I thought it was for my children's future. Instead, that money went to Robyn's house. I didn't even know until these documents came out. Her voice cracked. She covered her face, sobbing into her hands. The judge called for a brief pause, allowing Christine to gather herself. The jury's eyes softened. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, clearly affected by her pain. When she finally looked up again, her expression had hardened. I wasn't just lied to, I was used. My sacrifices built their comfort, while my kids and I were left with nothing but debt and false promises. Coyote Pass was never for me. It was always for him and for Robyn. Her words cut deeper than any financial chart could. In one moment, Christine reframed the entire case, not as a matter of numbers, but as a betrayal of love and trust. Kody shifted in his seat, his face flushed. He shook his head violently, glaring at Christine. Robyn wept into a tissue, muttering, "That's not what happened. That's not fair." But the jury wasn't looking at them anymore. They were locked on Christine, a woman who had lived the sacrifices and now demanded justice. The prosecutor gave her a final question. Christine, what does Coyote Pass mean to you now? Her answer was devastating in its simplicity. It means nothing. It was supposed to be our forever. Now it's just the graveyard of every promise he ever made. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as Christine stepped down, her shoulders heavy, her tears unstoppable, but her voice had cut through like a blade. Next, Janelle Brown takes the stand, and her testimony about draining her retirement savings, only to end up in an RV while Robyn lived in luxury, leaves the jury furious. The prosecutor's voice rang out again. The plaintiffs called Janelle Brown to the stand? If Christine's testimony had broken hearts, everyone in the courtroom knew Janelle's would aim straight at the jury's sense of fairness. She wasn't the loud one, not the fiery one. She was the practical one, the numbers person, the wife who had always been the family's financial backbone. And now, she was ready to show exactly how her trust had been weaponized against her. Janelle walked calmly to the stand, her face composed but her jaw tight. She swore in and sat down, her eyes fixed firmly on the prosecutor, refusing to look in Kody's direction. The prosecutor began, Mrs. Brown, can you explain what financial contributions you personally made toward Coyote Pass? Janelle nodded slowly. Yes, I drained my retirement savings. Over $250,000. That was money I had saved for decades. Money meant for my children's education, for my future security. I put it into the family LLC because Kody told me it was for Coyote Pass. He promised me this land would be our legacy. The prosecutor flipped to a record already in evidence. And where did that money go? Her voice hardened, though her eyes glistened with restrained tears. Not into Coyote Pass, not into building homes. It went into paying off overdue loans. It went into interest payments, and some of it, according to these records, went directly into Robyn's mansion. While I was living in an RV on the land I supposedly helped buy, Robyn was in an $890,000 house. That's where my retirement went. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Christine covered her mouth, shaking her head. Meri sat rigid, her lips pressed tightly together, as if silently screaming. I knew it. This wasn't just unfair, it was betrayal in its purest form. A woman giving everything for a dream, only to be left with nothing. Janelle leaned forward, her voice trembling now. Do you know what it's like to tell your children you can't afford their tuition because their father misused your money? Do you know what it's like to live in an RV without heat, without comfort, while you drive past the house you paid for, but don't get to live in? The jury shifted uncomfortably. Some shook their heads, others frowned, their pen still moving but slower, heavier. The emotional weight of her words was undeniable. The prosecutor asked gently, "Did Mr. Brown ever disclose these financial moves to you?" Janelle's eyes finally shifted to Kody. Her voice was sharp, almost shaking with fury. "Number he told me to trust the process. He said I was being negative when I asked questions. He turned it around on me, made me feel guilty for doubting him. But all along, he knew exactly where the money was going. He knew, and he let me carry the burden." The jury wasn't just hearing financial testimony. They were witnessing emotional abuse layered over betrayal. The prosecutor gave her one final question. "Mrs. Brown, in your own words, what does this situation mean to you today?" Janelle's voice steadied, strong and unyielding. "It means I gave everything I had to a man who left me with nothing. It means the land I believed in, that I sacrificed for, was just a cover for his lies. And it means I will never forgive him for stealing not just my money, but my children's future." The silence that followed was deafening. Christine reached out to touch Janelle's arm, her eyes brimming with tears. Meri blinked rapidly, her lips pressed so tightly they turned white. On the defense side, Robyn sobbed openly, clinging to Kody's sleeve. But Kody himself sat stone-faced, his fists clenched, his gaze locked on the table before him. The jury didn't just hear betrayal. They felt it, and it hit like a hammer. Next, Meri Brown takes the stand, and her testimony about being sidelined, erased from the deeds, and forced into silence paints Kody's manipulation in devastating detail. The prosecutor's voice weighed heavy on the entire courtroom. The plaintiffs call Meri Brown to the stand. The room realigned. Meri stood up slowly, her movements slow, her expression white but resolute. For years, she had been the wife on the sidelines, the forgotten one, too readily dismissed as bitter or isolated. Today, though, Meri wasn't an afterthought. She was a witness, and her testimony could remake the jury's comprehension of just how profound Kody's manipulation had been. She adjusted her glasses after the oath, her hands shaking ever so slightly as she curled her fingers into her lap. The prosecutor leaned forward softly. "Mrs. Brown, you were Kody's first wife. How did you fit into the early financial arrangements of the family?" Meri spoke softly but firmly. "At first, I was the legal wife. That gave me a certain protection under the law. Even though we were all spiritually wed, my name was on the initial papers. My position was safe. At least, that was what I believed." The prosecutor nodded. "And what occurred in 2014, when your legal marriage to Mr. Brown was annulled?" Meri's eyes welled up, but she didn't blink. "I was told that it was for love, that it was so that Kody could adopt Robyn's kids, that it was a sacrifice, a gift to the family. I did believe it. I signed on the dotted line. I relinquished my legal status, my protection, because I did think it was for the betterment." The prosecutor waved the divorce papers and the follow-up marriage certificate of Kody and Robyn. "And what did you lose in that transaction?" Meri's voice cracked. "Everything, my rights as a legal wife, my status within the family. After that, I wasn't just spiritually discarded, I was struck off on paper, and when Coyote Pass entered into the picture, I saw how much that lost me. My name was erased from the deeds. I had no say, no voice, no stake." The jury shifted uneasily, looking at one another. This was not economic betrayal. This was erasure. A woman erased from her own family history by the person she loved and trusted most. The prosecutor moved in closer. Meri, when did you know Coyote Pass was not the dream that had been promised to you? Her mouth pressed into a thin line, her fists clenching the sides of her seat. When I looked at the deeds, my name was not on them. Nobody had said anything. Nobody had asked me. It was just gone, and when I questioned Kody about it, he said not to worry, that I was still part of the family. But the fact was staring me in the face in black and white. I had been erased. The silence was suffocating. Even the judge leaned forward, studying Meri's face, her tone dropped, shaking but firm. For years, folks wondered why I stayed, why I didn't speak up. It is because I thought stupidly that perhaps one day I'd be important again. But what is true is I was expendable to him and Coyote Pass. That wasn't ever mine. It was never intended for me. It was his means to manipulate us, to keep us quiet, to drive me out altogether. The jury didn't just see a forgotten wife anymore. They saw a woman stripped of her legal identity, her sacrifices erased, her trust exploited. Christine's hand found Meri's across the table, squeezing it tightly. Janelle's eyes filled with tears, her lips pressed together as if holding back years of rage. Across the aisle, Robyn collapsed, crying helplessly, mumbling, "That is not true. It wasn't like that." But Kody remained immovable, his jaw set, his fists clenched in the wood of the table. The prosecutor shut his folder. "Mrs. Brown, one final question. What is justice to you today?" Meri took a deep breath, her eyes brimming with tears but unyielding. "Justice is the truth being witnessed. Justice is this court acknowledging that I was removed, that we all were. And justice is reclaiming the land he took from us." The courtroom remained still. For the first time, the forgotten wife's voice had pierced louder than Kody's. Then, the defense does its last-ditch attempt, calling Robyn Brown to testify. Her testimony is an emotional one, but the cross-examination will reveal contradictions that leave the jury stunned. The defense lawyer rose suddenly, his chair scraping over the floor. His voice boomed out. "The defense calls Robyn Brown to the stand." The gallery reacted with whispers. Everyone expected this. The time Robyn would attempt to restore her image, the time she would beg the jury not as the so-called favorite wife, but as a wrongfully misunderstood woman caught in between. Robyn went slowly to the stand, gripping a tissue in her fist, red and puffy from crying, her eyes, her body shaking as she took the oath. She sat down, her voice already cracking before a question was even asked. The defense lawyer gentled his tone. "Mrs. Brown, can you tell the jury what Coyote Pass meant to you?" Robyn dried her tears, shaking. "It meant family. It meant oneness. I thought it was going to be where our children raised their children together, where we built a heritage. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I never asked Kody to do anything against Christine or Janelle or Meri. All I wanted was a place for my children and some stability." The lawyer nodded sympathetically. "Did you know where the money for your house came from?" Her voice broke. "Number, I thought it was coming from family decisions as a whole. Kody said that everything was decided. I trusted my husband. I never knew it would end like this." Tears flowed down her face. She glanced at the jury, her voice shaking. "I know everyone believes I am the cause of all of this, but I never wanted discord. I wanted us to be together. I just wanted to be loved." A few of the jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some seemed sympathetic, others doubted her. This was Robyn's opportunity to portray herself as the victim. But the prosecution wasn't going to let her get off that easily. As soon as the defense attorney sat down, tension filled the room. The prosecutor rose, sheets of paper clutched in his hand, his tone steady, almost clinical. Mrs. Brown, you stated under oath that you had no idea where the money came from to buy your house. But isn't it a fact that you signed the closing papers on your $890,000 Flagstaff estate? Robyn went stiff. Her voice cracked. Yes, but I didn't read the specifics. Kody took care of it. The prosecutor leaned in. You signed documents for close to $1 million and never bothered to ask where the money was coming from. Not even once, she stuttered. I trusted him. The prosecutor's tone hardened. Isn't it also the case that you said to a TLC producer, off camera, that you wouldn't rent a house that you insisted on a purchase because renting was beneath you? Robyn's eyes went wide. Her tears accelerated. I never said that. The prosecutor produced a transcript, thumping it down on the table. We have under oath testimony from a producer who happened to be there, you stated. I need you to be a man and buy me a house, or I don't think I can do this. Did you actually say those words? Yes or no? Robyn collapsed, crying. I may have said something like that, but I did not mean it like that. The jurors leaned forward, their pens scribbling in furious motion. Robyn's tears were no longer protection. They were proof of inconsistency. The prosecutor hammered on. You say you didn't know where the money was coming from, but you profited from Christine's house sale and Janelle's retirement fund, didn't you? Robyn cried openly. I didn't ask for it. I didn't know. The prosecutor's voice sliced through. But you signed the documents. You resided in the mansion. You reaped the rewards, and now you sit here demanding sympathy while these women gave up everything. Silence filled the courtroom, punctuated only by Robyn's hysterical sobs. Kody tried to take her hand, but she jerked away, hiding her face in tissues. The jury no longer saw a victim. They were witnessing complicity, a woman who wept innocence, but put her name on the documents that wrapped up the betrayal. The prosecutor swiveled around, his last words hanging in the air. Mrs. Brown, you didn't only become part of a family, you assisted in tearing it apart, and you did so with your signature. Robyn sobbed senselessly as the judge asked for order. It was done. Then the trial rushes towards its culmination, the final arguments in which the prosecution string all the betrayals together, and the defense is fumbling to save Kody and Robyn's reputation ahead of the jury rendering their heartbreaking verdict.